Gear acquisition syndrome is real. You know, that intense urge you get that becomes so unbearable. Why is your mind going there? That uncontrollable urge to buy more photo and video gear, you know, that just getting this one lens or new camera body will take your photography skills to the next level. The lens to get the perfect shots or to get the look that a photographer you admire has. There are stages you go through if you are unlucky enough to suffer from this affliction. One of the first signs is that when you start noticing things about your current setup, your current gear just doesn't have the spark it used to have. It's not feeling as good in your hands as it used to. And maybe you find yourself not feeling at your creative best like you would if you had that new camera body. And when you think about it, your gear is getting a bit dated, right? I mean, when you think about all the new lenses that have come out since you've upgraded, you're thinking about all the improvements to autofocus and sharpness, chromatic aberration, bokeh. It just almost makes you feel sick. Then there's something that happens next, and it isn't entirely by accident. You catch wind of a new camera body or lens coming out, by accident, and then you start watching YouTube videos and reviews about them. You watch comparison videos back to back, staying up late till midnight on a work week when you should be in bed. You start imagining yourself with this new piece of gear and you can just feel the success coming in, right? You can smell the money flowing into your bank account once your prospective clients see the work you're going to produce with it. The color seems to fade from life. Nothing is the same, and it probably won't be until something changes. And now this new piece of gear really isn't something that is just a want anymore. You literally need it to do an amazing job on your next gig or project. Otherwise, your work is just gonna fall short, and at the very least, it won't even be worthy enough to post to Instagram. The next thing that happens is all too familiar. You start looking at all of your old photos and you say to yourself, if I had that 35 f1.4, this shot would have been so much better. You see, that's why I need a 35. You start to justify to yourself all the reasons why you need better gear, why your f1.8 just isn't enough. But now you need the 50 f1.2 because the bokeh is just going to be so out of control that your clients will pay you double and treat you to a nice steak dinner after their session. And then when you find yourself in challenging lighting conditions, you tell yourself that if your camera body were newer, it would perform better in low light conditions and probably have better dynamic range. Or if you miss a shot by happenstance, you start thinking about how new and improved autofocus system and a new camera body would not have missed that shot. Or it could be the next time that you're editing after a session where you're zooming all the way in and you think to yourself, see, this is why I need the new 24-70 Mark II. It's just so much sharper than this lens. The next time you're at a long shoot or a wedding, you start thinking about how heavy your gear feels, and then you start thinking about the perfect travel kit that you need to get so that you can be more mobile and not be so bogged down by your gear. Or it could be one of those situations where the new gear will inspire you creatively. It will push you to shoot differently, right? Zoom with your feet or bring out colors in bokeh that you don't have with your other lenses. Eventually though, you find yourself online searching the latest gear that you've been eyeing, watching tons of YouTube videos and reviews, just daydreaming about the newest gear on your lunch break. You probably check your Amazon favorites list every other day just to see if you can get a deal. And then one day you say, to heck with all of that, I need to have this right now. So you log on to your gear acquisition store of choice and you place an order. And then as your anticipation for its arrival builds, you humble brag to your creative friends about all the new projects you're going to be working on in the next month or so once you get your hands on your new piece of gear. Finally, it arrives and you're ecstatic and you can't wait to take it out for your next project. And once you make it back from your latest shoot and you have a tinge of guilt in the pit of your stomach because your photos are not really better and your client didn't take you out for that nice steak dinner. In fact, they just texted you asking how soon their photos will be ready just an hour after you got home. Then you check your bank account for a quick tally on, how much you spent. And you start thinking, man, did I really need to pay over $2K for this lens? It could be just a day or even several weeks later before that tinge of guilt starts to fade away. But when it does, man, you're feeling good. You're feeling as good as ever. And that beautiful piece of gear that you've been doing so much research on and dreaming about, thinking about, telling anyone who would listen about it, it's now yours and it's in your hands. And you're on top of the world and nothing can stop you. Nothing. But of course, you will eventually either enter into a stage that is both the beginning and the end. Depending on the cost of the purchase, you can find yourself in this phase pretty fast. If it was a splurge on something relatively inexpensive, and when I say inexpensive, that's really one of those personal perspective type situations. But the more expensive, the larger the purchase, the longer you can keep this final stage at bay. And either way, eventually though, you'll see a YouTube video or an Instagram post, or you might ask one of your creative friends what lens they used to capture a photo that you thought was stunning, and your mind starts to turn. You start taking a mental stock of the gear that you have. You start thinking about how your style has evolved over the years, and somehow you have done a crappy job of making sure that your gear has also evolved with it. Now, it's starting to feel like your gear is holding you back yet again. Now, in order to not end up here all over again, I think it's really important to really think about the gear that you have and how you're currently using that gear. Suppose you find that there are lenses or camera bodies that just stay on the shelf or in your bag. Start evaluating whether or not you need to keep that in your kit. Instead of replacing it with the newest version of that gear, think about how you are currently using your gear and what gigs you're currently going after and what your primary use case for the gear you have is. If you can make money with the gear you have and your results are great, then usually there's not really a lot of reason to grab the latest and greatest. And another thing is, of course, keep in mind that if you do plan to upgrade, it doesn't have to be the latest and greatest. It could just be the latest and greatest to you. Now, if you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a like and hit the subscribe button for more videos just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.